Welcome everyone to this afternoon's webinar. It's a kick-off, it's a shorter webinar today, and it's kicking off the 2022 Environmental Performance Review project. I begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm presenting from, the Gadigal people, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present. And I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples in attendance on this webinar today. We're very fortunate to have project providers today and webinar co-presenters from CSIRO who are with us today. So I'd like to introduce, first of all, Dr. Brad Ridout, who can introduce his team as well. Hi, Brad.
Hi, Matt, and it's a great privilege to be once again involved in the Environmental Performance Review. Personally, I was involved in the review that occurred back in 2015. I'm a strong believer in the importance of the review, and in fact, I'm working on a project with MLA right at the moment to do with the pathways to climate neutrality that is actually using the data from the, not the original data, but the published data from the EPRs, because the scope of their work incorporates the processing part of the industry as well. So it's exciting project, it's an important project. My background's in environmental sciences, so I'm going to be the one who's going to be crunching the numbers and writing the report and so forth. But I'm going to be working alongside Anita Sykes from our Brisbane offices. Anita, I don't know if you want to give a wave if you can see Anita. But Anita's most important because she's the one you're going to be sending your completed surveys to, and she's going to keep and check on them, and she's also the person who is your first point of contact if you have any, when you're filling out the survey, you have any questions, and she can probably help you in most cases. If not, I can step in and provide additional support if anything's not clear, or you know, you need some support or whatever. But we're the main team from CSIRO, and we're very pleased to be involved. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks for that, Brad. And we give this project a big star, as you can see there, because it continues more than 20 years of sectoral environmental key performance indicators and reporting on those indicators. So it's considered a flagship report as far as that's concerned for environmental performance for the sector. And talking of performance, processes have a lot to be confident about regarding the sector's environmental performance over quite a number of years. Just as an example, average emissions intensity has reduced by 28% since 2010, and average water intensity on intake has reduced by 9% since 2010. So there's a lot of good things that have been achieved so far, and this continues that good, reliable reporting. So it's a flagship report. As you can see there, the reason why we do this reporting, why we encourage members to voluntarily participate in this project. First of all, it's part of the AMPC strategic plan for 2025. And under goal 3 of that strategic plan, we have a real focus on using facts underpinned by science to support processes in building community and stakeholder trust. So trust is very important to the results of this report, and that enables transparent environmental disclosure, which of course is the first step in improving your environmental performance. So red meat processes are transparent when it comes to environmental performance, particularly for the sector, as mentioned, with over 2 decades of anonymised sectoral disclosure. So this disclosure, this reporting is not on an individualised basis, it's for the sector. So participants who partake in this reporting are not identified. It's aggregated data, it's voluntary, and it helps the world understand the environmental performance and the successes and the difficulties as well that we're having around our environmental performance. So the aim this year for 2022 is to really expand the level of voluntary participation even further, because we're hoping to have enough participation, enough data that we can separate performance into beef and sheep, which is, as you can see there, both the beef and sheep sustainability frameworks are now in place. So we're looking to mirror, you know, the indicators that they need for their reporting, and that's what this project will help do as well. So Brad, can I go back to you and to talk about what the report actually comprises?
Yeah, well, the survey that will come to you from AMPC. It's designed to be self-explanatory and as simple and easy to complete as we can possibly make it. And as I said before, if there's anything that's not clear, Anita's contacts will be there, and you can check in with her and she can provide support, or if necessary, I can get involved and support you with filling it out. But it is important that we get as many people filling it out as possible, because that upholds the credibility of the data, and also makes it possible to tease out maybe some of the differences between the larger animals and the smaller animals and so forth. The survey document itself is in Excel format, so you know it's easy for anyone to use. And if you've been involved in previous EPR surveys over the years, you'll see that it has many things in common with what you have seen before, but we've tried to simplify it where we can, and also enhance a few areas around waste and wastewater and so forth, because we found that some of those questions were not being answered very thoroughly in the past, and we hope to get more complete data at this time. But the reason why it has a lot in common is because the environmental performance review has common indicators that have been going, as Matt said, for around 20 years. And so we want to calculate the same thing, so then we can show the performance improvement over time, which is really important to show that the industry is doing all the right things and taking things seriously. So the first part of the survey is just about sort of what you're processing and how much you're processing, that sort of thing, whether you do rendering and the like. But then there's different tabs that step you through energy use and water use and noise complaints and wastewater and these types of things. But the key indicators at the end of the day is emissions intensity, which is around the greenhouse gas emissions, usually expressed as kilograms CO2 equivalent. Energy intensity, which is a resource use efficiency measure. Similarly for water use intensity, and then solid waste to landfill, and amenities, which as I mentioned just a moment ago, is to do with odour and noise. And in the main, you've been doing pretty well on that. But it's something that is part of the ongoing record of reporting. And it's really great to have that continuity. It shows that environment is not a new thing for your industry. You've been aware and taking action for many decades. But in addition to these key indicators, when you get the survey, you'll notice that there's also provision, a box where you can make a note of anything that you're doing special or new, or things you've implemented in the last 12 months. And just so we can keep a track of what's new and happening in the industry. And there may be an opportunity for AMPC to follow up with you about that and maybe feature some of these new developments, which is a good way of making the report more interesting, and not just numbers, but some case studies, and also, putting some of the detail that goes on behind the scenes to deliver the improvement in these indicators as well. So that's a little bit about the survey and what to expect.
Thanks, Brad. And while you were talking, I got a couple of messages on my phone. I wasn't making a call to someone else. I was getting a message regarding what you were talking about. And I've already got a request, someone asking, can you please send the latest environmental performance report? It's actually, and I'll send that person the environmental performance review. It's from 2020. We're doing it every 2 years now. It used to be every 5 years, but with the way things are accelerating with CN30 coming up fast, we need to do reporting a bit more frequently. So we'll send that person the report, but it is on our website as well, I was going to mention. Brad, another question you might like to answer that I've got here. The KPIs are useful. Are there secondary observations around energy efficiency, water recycling, etc.?
Yeah, so under each topic area, you might say, there's some of the numbers that are needed about, you know, how much energy you're using and so forth. But then there's a sort of an open box which invites you to alert us to any new initiatives or new actions or any changes that have occurred in or since 2020. And that, as I mentioned, we can draw out some secondary observations from around that may not be expressed in the indicator values themselves, but can give insights as to what the industry is doing. And as I mentioned also, there's potential for maybe some follow-up and for some of these things to be discussed a little bit more descriptively in the report, to make the report not only about numbers but also a little bit about stories.
Exactly, that's a good point, Brad. The key performance indicators and the secondary indicators help develop that story really well for us, and we can tell we can develop some good narrative around certain environmental factors that are going really well. Another question here on the phone, Brad. It's a confidential survey. How long will it take to complete? That's the question there.
I mean, it could be, everyone's going to be slightly different. I mean, in my experience before, I know that some processes keep all this information in a central computer database or whatever, and it's just a matter of pulling that data out and popping it in the survey document that will be provided to you. And I think if that's the case, it probably wouldn't take much more than about an hour. But in other cases, you know, not all the same information, not all the necessary information may be held by everyone, by one person, and so it may need to be passed around to different people in the plant. If that's the case, maybe the 1 hour is shared across 2 or 3 different people. So everyone's going to be a little bit different. And you know, really, it depends to some degree on whether you have the data easily on hand or whether it just takes a bit more effort to pull it up. But it's sort of days of these becoming increasingly familiar for processes to be keeping track of. So hopefully it's not asking you anything that takes you by surprise. So I think as a basic budget, I guess 1 hour, but you know, I'm not 100% sure.
Thanks, Brad. And the other question, what support is provided?
Well, it's an Excel spreadsheet, so there's not any fancy system you have to learn to navigate through or anything like that. It's Excel, which most people can just open up on their computers, and it's self-explanatory. The questions should be pretty clear and obvious, but if they're not, and no problem if there's something that is not 100% clear, Anita's contact details, email and phone number will be on the first page, and just drop an email or or a phone call to Anita, and she will endeavour to help you. And if as I said, it's something more technical and there's some difficulty, then I can be brought involved, because we just want to help you to make the task as simple as possible and to get as much data as we can, because the more data we have, the stronger the whole report and story becomes. And also when we get your surveys back in, we check through them to make sure there's nothing that looks a bit odd. It's only natural, we deal with these things all the time, but things go in with the units are wrong, so it's out by a factor 1,000 or something like that. These things happen. We might come back to you if necessary to just confirm some of those responses to make sure that we understand what you've written. But the other thing, if anything's unclear or you find that your response is needing a little explanation, it's Excel, so you can just take the cell beside it that's blank and write a little note just to help us interpret what you've written, and so then we can be sure about what it is. So we work collaboratively, and we'll do whatever we can to make it as successful and as simple as possible.
Thanks, Brad. That's encouraging. There's good support for members. It's not difficult to complete, and there's a lot of feedback that comes back to members from the completed report. I should also mention that for the first time this year, there's a different feature in regard to the report. And this year, we're asking participants to volunteer their best practice environmental case studies. And we're going to ask Brad to help select the best of those environmental case studies for inclusion in an addendum to the report. So we can show leadership where it exists as far as environmental performance is concerned for the sector. Of course, that's voluntary as well. That's all of this is totally voluntary. So just to recap, we'll just recap on the member benefits so everyone's clear. This report helps satisfy stakeholders, and as far as environmental performance is concerned, and those stakeholders could be customers, retailers, consumers, producers, could be a number of stakeholders that this reporting satisfies. It builds trust with communities, very important. One of our goals in sustainability is to keep building trust with communities through transparency. Members can receive valuable benchmarking data that they can compare their own performance to. So this will go towards making up the sectoral benchmarking, and members can compare themselves against that. It demonstrates ongoing commitment to the industry's sustainability frameworks that we report to, as I mentioned, the beef and the sheep sustainability frameworks, and also under carbon neutral 2030 that our whole red meat industry is aspiring to achieve. This year, you can submit best practice environmental case studies as a bonus for profiling leadership. Members are achieving that. And as an incentive, the first 30 members to complete this survey receive an energy and water benchmarking session with a third-party consultant that will include project solutions to improve your energy and water benchmarking, your energy and water performance. So that's a tool that exists, and we've been using that for several years as well. So everything has a trend. We've been trending environmental performance in our benchmarking and etc. over quite a number of years. So that's one of our shorter webinars today. If there's no further Q&A, I can't see any further questions coming through. Brad, did you have any other points to raise, or?
No, I need to finish by saying that, we're here to help. We want to make it as successful as possible. And, I know that, no one's excited about getting a survey in the mail or email, but hopefully we've designed it in a way that it's not too onerous, and that and the support is here if needed.
That's very true, Brad. Thanks for that. So thanks very much for your support on this project, Brad and Anita, and for your presenting today and explaining how the survey works. Appreciate your help on this. And our next steps will be to send out an expression of interest, not that we are selecting anyone who puts in an EOI, anyone can participate. But the next step is to send out a formal EOI so members know the process for committing to this, this project. Well, thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to talking on the environmental performance review for 2022 again. Thank you.